G'day poker people, I've been on a huge downswing in my past few videos, but when I get all in multi-way in this pot worth over $5,000, it could be exactly what I need to get unstuck. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video to not only see the exciting conclusion to this hand, but also the final results and how they've affected the downswing. Before any of that though, we have an action-packed session of 5, 10, 20 to get to, so let's get to gambling and let's go. So we are in the mix for 2,000 bangers and we get a very warm welcome to the game when I peel pocket kings on the button. I open it up to 60 bangers and then I get called by an aggressive big blind. So it heads up to a flop of Queen 6-4 rainbow. When they check it over to me, definitely want to start building a pot here. So I c-bet for 50 bangers and then the villain throws in the call. So it heads up to a turn, which is the 3 of hearts, putting in backdoor hearts, also 7-5 does get in. So when the villain checks it over to me, I think they're gonna have a few really strong hands on this board. So I actually want to use a smaller bet size here, just so if the opponent does check raise, at least we get a bit of a warning shot if they are near the top of their range, but we still get pretty good value from hands like Queen X and worse pairs that want a hero. So I go ahead and make it 100 here, and then the villain throws in the call. Very happy to not get raised here. So when the river's a 9 of diamonds and they check it over to me, still want to try and eke out a bit of a value here. And when I think about my bet sizing here, I sort of want to go a size that is the maximum a Queen X hand will call. And if I was trying to bluff this villain off of a queen, I'd probably want to go something like 500 or maybe even larger. So I think this is a perfect spot to bet my lucky number. I blaze it up to 420 bangers, and then the villain doesn't think too long before folding. So even though we don't get value on the river here, we are starting things off hot, and I've got a good feeling about the session. Next hand, the action folds to my small blind with Ace-6 of clubs. I raise it up to 80 bangers and then I only get called by the big blind. So it heads up to a flop of 10-5-3 with 2 diamonds, no clubs. So I check it over the villain, see what they go ahead and do. They check back, so we get a free turn, which is the 8 of spades. Now I do think we have a lot of showdown value with our ace high, and I actually think it's a good spot we can go ahead and bet for like really thin value, just because this board is so ridiculously where my opponent could have flush draws, straight draws, and sure, occasionally they're going to call with a hand stronger than ace high, but I think it's more likely to have a draw, particularly when they check back on the flop. So I go ahead and make it 75 here, going for that really thin value, and then the villain throws in the call. So we were happy to see that, but when the river's the 2 of clubs, pretty much every draw missed except for 6-4, so I don't think we're going to get any more value from worse hands. So I check it over the villain, see what they go ahead and do, maybe line up a hero call, but when they go ahead and bet 175, I definitely get a little bit of pause of hero calling with ace high. I mean, sure, every draw missed, but I guess 6-4 got in. If they had 2 pair like 3-2 or maybe like 8-5, something a turn 2 pair that didn't want to raise, I wouldn't be totally shocked either. Having said that though, if they are bluffing with all of their missed gut shots, straight draws, flush draws, they are going to be over bluffing to a significant degree. So I throw my hands up in the air. I think this is a good spot to throw in the hero call with ace high. And I do it, I throw in the call, and then the villain shows Jack 9 of hearts, let's go. They missed the open-ended straight draw, turned it into a bluff, but they couldn't get it past ace high here. Let's go. Next hand, there's limp under the gun and then an aggressive button raises it up to 80. When I'm on the big blind, I'm definitely going to want to be playing a 3-bet or fold strategy here. So when I peel Queen 10 of clubs, this definitely fits in the 3-bet category, definitely strong enough. I make it 300 bangers to go, and then much to my surprise, I get cold called by the straddle and both the other players fold. So it actually heads up to a flop of Jack 5-3 with 2 hearts, no clubs. Pretty big whiff here, and I honestly think the cold caller of the 3-bet has a strong range, like probably the weakest hand they might have here is ace king. So I just check it over to them, and when they rip it all in for 1,000 bangers, we are not throwing in a hero call with queen high. I make the snap fold, and then the villain shows his hand and he had 7 deuce. Oh my god, what an epic bluff by the villain, and everyone else at the table loved to see it.
What? Oh! No! Take that, Lee.
Next hand has the $40 under the gun straddle on, and I know, because it's me, I put the under the gun straddle on. Under the gun it limps, the action's on my straddle with 9-3 of spades. Of course, I've got to raise it up to my lucky number. I blaze it up to 420 bangers. I'm just playing, I check and take a free flop, obviously, and the flop is Queen 7 deuce with 2 clubs. Pretty big whiff for us. I check it over to the villain, who checks back. When they turn to Jack of spades, I think when they check on the flop, it's very unlikely they have a pair, and they're probably just going to have a bunch of ace high hands, and I definitely want to start attacking that range, but want to use a large size as well. So I go ahead and make it 125 to go, and then the villain throws in the call. Definitely not ideal, particularly when the river is the 10 of clubs. I think they're going to have plenty of like jack tens, and even if they had ace king, I wouldn't be totally shocked either. But they could also have a bunch of stuff like ace 10, maybe a weak jack, and I really do want to keep attacking that range, but just don't want to use a ginormous size or anything, since the villain can definitely still have the nuts here. So I decide to make it 325, and the villain doesn't think too long before throwing in the call. Damn, this villain has been owning us, you hate to see it. I proudly table my bluff, and then the villain shows ace jack, so probably going to be pretty hard to get him off of that hand, in all honesty. Next hand up, the small blind opens it to 75, and I'm in the big blind with ace 9 of spades, and I definitely want to play a hand this strong, but I think we want to 3-bet it and not give the straddle a good price to overcall, and then we have to play monkey in the middle. So I go ahead and 3-bet it up to 250, and then what do you know? The straddle cold calls anyway, so much for that plan. Small blind calls as well, so we're 3 ways to a flop of ace 7-3, rainbow with 1 spade. When the small blind checks it over to me, I actually think this might be a good spot to protect our checking range with a strong hand, just because I actually think it's pretty likely both of the villains have a bunch of ace-x hands that are stronger than ours in their range, and even if they have a weaker hand like a pocket pair, I mean, sure, they'll probably call 1-bet, but even that's a bit dicey in a 3-bet pot. Whatever the case, I'm losing and maybe on a bit of tilt because of it, so I'm going to bias towards the aggressive option. Don't know if it's actually the right play though. I go ahead and make it 300 bangers here. The straddle folds, and then the small blind check raises to 750, and we're hating life. I definitely think they could have ace king in their range and then trying to fast play, putting me on a worse ace, and 2 pairs and sets are absolutely possible as well. And it's pretty unlikely they have a draw on this board unless it's 5-4, which is double gutted specifically, and they probably only have a suited version of it. And just against that range, ace 9 is an absolute dog, even with the backdoor flush draw, even getting a good price in position. So I do decide to stay disciplined now and fold my hand, which is a play I'm very happy with. Just came a little bit too late with the discipline here. This next hand is absolutely insane. Not only do we have the 40 and the 80, but we have the $160 straddle on for this one. And even more shockingly, I haven't been baited to putting on any of them because I'm in the big blind for this hand. But whatever the case, the action actually starts off on the cutoff, who has 1,200 in their stack. And I know how much they have because they just cold rip it all in for the 1,200. When the action folds back to me, there's still 3 people left to act behind me. So when I peel ace 10 offsuit, it's a pretty close spot. I think the initial ripper probably has a bunch of pocket pairs in their range. They definitely can have some worse aces, like ace 5 suited, even like ace 6 suited wouldn't totally shock me either. Having said that though, if they have a hand that's stronger than us, we really don't want to be committing this much money to the pot, particularly when one of the 3 people left to act can just wake up with a stronger hand. So ultimately, I do decide to stay disciplined here and end up folding my ace 10, and then the action actually folds all the way around, so this cutoff ends up taking it down with his pre-flop rip, and he was kind enough to show the table his hand, and he actually had pocket 5s. Now, if I knew he had pocket 5s here, I would have been pretty happy to take the flip, especially considering all the overlay of the dead money from the straddles, but in the long run, I do think staying disciplined here is good with this hand, and we can't get too caught up on what the specific results from this instance were. Next hand up, I'm the under the gun straddle yet again for the 40, and then the same aggressive villain we've been going to war with today opens it up to 105 bangers. When the action folds back round to me, I'm going to want to be defending pretty wide here out of the second straddle, getting a good price. So when I peel a 9-7 offsuit, this is just good enough in my opinion. So I do throw in the call, and then we're heads up to a flop, which is 3-7-9, baby, with 2 diamonds. We flop top 2 pair with this trash hand. You love to see it. When I check it over to the villain, they just rip it all in for 315. I'm going to go ahead and snap call this wager. I throw in the call and just like, bro, I just hit 2 pair. I'll show my hand straight away. And then the turn is the queen of diamonds, so a little bit of worry he might have a flush draw. The river's a jack of clubs, and then the villain does show ace 10 of diamonds. Oh my god, I can't believe he got there, and he's beating us yet again in this session. This bloke is our absolute kryptonite. This next hand's an absolute ripper. I'm in the hijack with King Queen. I raise it up to 60 and I get 3 different callers. So we're 4 ways to a flop of King 4, Queen with 2 clubs. Let's go. We flop top 2 pair yet again. What could go wrong? The action checks to me. Definitely want to start building a pot with a hand this strong. I make it 75, and then what do you know? The same aggressive villain to our direct left raises again. He goes ahead and makes it 225. When the action folds back to me, I actually think this is a really good spot to go ahead and 3-bet. If the opponent has worse 2 pairs, they're definitely going to call. If they have a flush draw, they're definitely going to call. And I think it's more likely they do have a hand that will call that is worse than ours. I'm occasionally going to have pocket 4s, but what are you going to do when that call happens? So I definitely want to raise 4 value here, particularly being out of position. So I decide to bolster it up to 700 bangers. And then unsurprisingly, the villain throws in the call. So we're off to a turn, which is the 3 of clubs. Absolutely hate seeing the flush draw get in. I think when the villain bets, raises, and then calls a 3-bet, they're just going to have all of the flush draws in their range. So I'm starting things off with a check, and pretty likely I might actually end up check folding here until the villain goes ahead and bets 500. Now when they use this smaller size, I'm like, okay, maybe he does have a worse 2 pair and he just doesn't want a flush draw to get there for free. And even if he does have a flush, I mean, we're not getting direct odds to draw by any means, but there are going to at least be some implied odds of us boating up in the river. So facing this bet size, I really don't think we can fold. So I do throw in the call, and then we're off to a river, which is maybe the most interesting one in the deck. It is the 4 of hearts, and of course the evil ideas start running through my head. Can I credibly represent a full house by going all in here? And I think the answer to that is yes. The villain is going to put me on pocket kings and pocket queens a lot of the time with this line I've taken. But the even more important question is, even if I can credibly represent a full house, will the villain actually fold a flush to an all-in rip here? And I think the honest answer to that question is probably not, particularly if they do have the ace high clubs. I mean, if I did hit a king or a queen on the river, I would probably rip it all in, expecting to get paid off by those hands. So in order to stay logically consistent, I really can't turn my hand into a bluff here. So I do check it over to the villain, who checks back pretty quickly with ace 8 of clubs. So there you go, he did have the nut flush. Would have he folded it to an all-in on the river? I really don't think so, but I guess we'll never know for sure. Next hand up is a Putt Limit Omaha double board bomb pot. Love these bloody things. We're in the hijack and we actually flop an open-ended straight draw on the first board, as well as top 2 pair on the second board, so pretty happy to see that. Until the big blind lead pots it for 175, and then the under the gun player raises to 500. When the action's on me, I have 1.6k in my stack. I am either repotting it for almost all in, or I'm just folding this hand. Repotting this hand feels like a bit of an overplay. I mean, with 2 players already showing a lot of aggression, very easy for each of them to have a set on each different board, and then I'm just behind both. Or even if I am ahead with the ace 8, they have a hand with great equity against us. So I think we get stacked here pretty often, particularly with a bunch of players left behind. I think maybe this is a prudent spot to make the hero fold. But where's the fun in that? I'm not going to get unstuck by folding. I repot it to 1550, leaving me with 50 behind. Then the big blind calls. The under the gun player repots it all in for 2k effective. Obviously not folding for 50 more, even though I am kind of shitting myself with all this action. I throw in the call. Big blind throws in the call as well. So definitely a lot of worry going against 2 different ranges in this spot. But if we can hold with our ace 8 and get there with our straight draw, we have a shot at scooping this $5,000 pot, which will definitely be a huge step of getting us out of this downswing that we've been on. And we've got the final board up there. You can see both of the boards up there, and the under the gun player shows 7544. So he actually has a straight on the second board and a set on the top board. When the big blind player marks, they're going to end up scooping us. And yeah, it really does feel like I overplayed this hand. I'm no PLO double board bomb pot by any stretch of the imagination. So if you do think I could have played this hand better, please let me know below in the comments. But whatever the case, we're getting stacked in this one and we're having to rebuy. So we're back in the mix for another 2,000 bangers. We're in this next hand. There's an open and a 3-bet to 400. So when we've got pocket aces, my favorite hand in the straddle, I don't think there's anything to do but just rip it all in for 2k effective, which is what I do. And then the action folds all the way around. So it's going to be a little bit disappointing to not get max value with our pocket aces here, but at least momentum's turning in our favor again. Let's go. Next hand, we're under the gun with Ace King. Let's go. I raise it up to 60 bangers. Low jack calls before the aggressive big blind 3-bets to 260. When the action's back on me here, could go either way between flatting or 4-betting, particularly with the tight dynamics of under the gun versus big blind. But I think with the cold caller in between and having this hand in particular, there is just that little bit of extra incentive to 4-bet here and kick them out. Maybe just fold out some of the villain's bluffs right now. So I go for it here. I 4-bet it up to 745 bangers. Apparently I'm being a bit weird with the weird sizings. Whatever the case though, the low jack folds and then the big blind is in the tank 45 seconds and he says out loud, all of my options suck, as he folds his hand. So very happy to take this one down now. The villain would later tell me that he had pocket queens, and in all honesty, I do believe him, and I am very happy to not take a flip with this hand and just take it down now. You love to see it. We finally got some new fits on leebets.com. We got the Pro Gambling Club and the Anti-Gambling Club. So anti-up poker people, it's time to get to gambling. Head over to leebets.com and let's go. So despite a pretty cold start to the session, things are starting to turn around now, and we've got this one final interesting hand to see if we can close things out on a happy note. So I'm on the button with Queen 10 offsuit, I make it 60, and then I only get called by the straddle. So it heads up to a flop of Ace Queen 5 with 2 diamonds. When the villain checks it over to me, you guys probably know by now, I'm not a fan of stabbing into ace high boards, particularly against last 2 acts defends. So I check it, and we get a free turn, and boy am I glad we do, because it's a Queen of Hearts, baby. Let's go. We turn trips. When the villain checks it over to me, time for us to start building a pot. I go ahead and make it 75 here. Maybe could let bet a little bit bigger. Whatever the case though, the villain does throw in the call. So it heads up to a river, which is the 2 of hearts. When the villain checks it over to me, I think they're still going to have all of the ace-x hands in their range. They're going to naturally check them to me as a pre-flop aggressor on the flop. They're going to check it on the turn when it's a scary card. So I think we want to put in a big bet for Velga here. Ultimately, I decide to size it to 300 bangers, and then the villain is in the tank a good 45 seconds or so before eventually and reluctantly throwing in the call. Exactly what we wanted to see. I end up showing my hand and they end up mucking, and we do close out this session on at least somewhat of a happy note, getting value here. There were 5 of us left in the game and a couple of people had to leave, so we decided to wrap this game up with a cheeky little bit of a $100 PLO flip, $100 per person. So if we win this flip, we're going to take home an extra 500 bangers, and even though we do make 2 pair with our King 7, we do end up losing 2 trips, so it's going to be another 100 bangers down the drain in the loss follow the session. So those were the most interesting hands we played across this 9.5 hour session, so definitely a long one. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to bust us out of this downswing, and we did end up losing 3,159 across the 9.5 hours. You definitely hate to see that. We are not out of the downswing yet, but make sure you hit subscribe, because in my very next video, it'll be the turning point where this downswing absolutely got obliterated. Hit subscribe and you'll see what I mean next week. But in case you are the type of individual which absolutely loves to see me lose, I'm going to put a video up on that screen now of another session of me losing at 5-10, so hit that if you're interested in watching me lose. For now though, I'm out of here. GG Gamble Gang.